All right, I know if you clicked on this video, you're probably like, well, I'll open it up and he's probably hanging out in his yard or somewhere on the trail showing this tent, and there'll be a nice background while we discuss the review on this tent. But today I am in the house. Don't worry, I got plenty of B-roll. We are in the middle of the hottest June I could think of in forever in 2022. It's a heat index of 110 right now here in Georgia. So it's a little warm outside. I've been itching to get this video out and I want to talk to you guys about it. I finally got one last outing with this tent and was super excited to finally talk about it with you guys and give my little bit of review or opinion or impressions of this tent. This is this review, excuse me, is about the Gossamer Gear The Two. This is the latest version, still roll over into 2022. This is a seal nylon tent. It's got 10D ripstop. Comes in at 23.5 ounces. That is a sweet sounding weight, so that is why this tent is pretty awesome if you're trying to keep your weight low. So guys, today we're gonna go through the pros and cons and then some side notes. I'll just kind of give you my impressions, and I've got plenty of B-roll to show you. My first time was setting it up earlier this year outside in our yard, and then as you'll tell in the video, it's the winter. But later on, I've got some other clips of some different trips where I filmed a little bit, and I did take it on a few trips where I didn't film. But I just wanted to go ahead and get plenty of knowledge on the tent, some experience with it before we did this video. There was going to be an earlier video this year, but for single wall tents, me personally, I don't think they're the best to use in the winter because you want that double wall that kind of helps trap the heat better. That's just from personal experience. And of course, the couple times I plan to take it out this winter, where in Georgia usually it doesn't get that cold, we had two of the coldest winter nights and I didn't bring it with me. So I was able later in the spring to use it more. Then I just took it out to Colorado last weekend. I'm in love with this tent. I'll go ahead and say that right off the top. It's been really good so far. I'm excited to share some details with you. There is some cons, but overall I think it's a great tent. So let's go ahead and get straight into it. So obviously the first thing is the weight. I already said it was 23.5 ounces. It's a super light tent. It is a trekking pole tent. It does not come with poles. You have to use trekking poles, or you can buy a pole designed for it. If you're already a person that uses trekking poles, then you're in perfect luck because you can just use those and set up. And then at the bottom of them, or the bottom of your poles actually stick in the ground, unlike some which flip them upside down. So yes, it's easy to set up. There is a small learning curve. As you've probably seen in the first clip, I'm not exactly have it taught the best way, but overall I still was able to get it up pretty easy. And there's a good instructional video on their website explaining what to do, but it's definitely for sure to stick to those 45s on the corners. And then definitely there's a couple other things I want to talk about in the cons, but definitely want to make sure you keep those angles correct. So another couple pros is, one is it's cheaper. It's not a Dyneema tent. It's half the price of a Z-Packs Dyneema tent. Yes, there's cons to not being Dyneema, but there's pros also. It does stuff down easier for sure. The price, like I just said, is half. And then another thing, and this is a nice pro that I've seen even somebody like Dixie from Homemade Wanderlust complaining lately, is that you don't have to seam seal it. It is pre-taped, it's pre-seam taped. So that is handy not to have to bring it home and do that. Now some websites do offer to do it for you, but it costs more. So this one is already seam taped, so you don't have to worry about seam sealing it. It is waterproof, or I guess, yeah, pretty waterproof right out from the factory, right out of the bag. So one last thing to say about the pros of it, it comes in a simple bag. I don't have it right here with me right now, but it comes in one simple bag that you can pull it in and out of. I just smush it right into it. I don't roll it up or anything. The material's pretty thin, so I don't really worry about it causing it to, I mean, even just crunching it up, then it's not really that big of a deal. It works perfect just to scrunch it up into that bag. It stuffs really easy. Probably can do it in 2 minutes. Pulls out real easy. Like I said, as long as you lay it out perfectly, you're in good shape to set it up with your stakes. All right, so let's go ahead and get into some of the cons. So there's not really a lot of cons, but I'll mention a couple things. One is the sacrifice you take with less weight is durability. This tent has some very thin sides on it, very thin floor. And honestly, my recommendation is, if you're a person that doesn't do footprints, I mean, you take a huge risk of tearing the bottom of this tent. The bathtub is very thin. Even this past weekend, I was looking at it and I was like, wow, if I did not have something under this, I'd be so nervous of catching on a rock or a root and tearing right through the bottom. So yes, and I say it as a con. It might be a con to some people. I say to me it's not, but it would be a con to some. Yes, you would need a footprint. I bought the Polycro and I forgot why I don't like Polycro. It's a little pain in the butt to like fold up and kind of keep a hold of and get straightened out. So I ended up buying another piece of Tyvek. I think I mentioned that in a video recently. Cut it to the dimensions of the bathtub and it worked perfectly. The last few trips and this trip out to Colorado, I used it. and it worked perfect with a piece of Tyvek. I was able to fold it up really easy and put it in the bottom. If you're interested in buying this one, I'll let you know what dimensions I cut my Tyvek at to go ahead and get it set up. That way it saves you the pain of it. And it worked really well. I did leave it out a little bit, but because your overhangs are pretty good, I don't really worry about his rain as much unless you're sitting on an angle. All right, so this would probably be my biggest con, and some will say, it ain't really that con. Most people do this anyways. The stakes it comes with are terrible. Like, don't use the stakes. If you use a stake, that's fine. They work great for you. They did, but to me, they're terrible. I'm a huge Y stake fan. These are not Y stakes. They just don't hold that well. And it's funny because you even watched their setup video, and he says the outer two vestibule, tie-offs, you need to upgrade those stakes. And I'm like, well, why don't y'all sell it with the upgraded stakes? But anyways, so yes, definitely get some Y stakes. I bought the Y's Eye ones off of Amazon. Comes with like 16. I've used them for multiple tents now and my tarp setup. Those are great. Those are Y stakes, and I just use them on multiple trips, and they've done really well. I'm still impressed with them. So definitely would want to look into some Y stakes or whatever you prefer, but the stakes that come with it, I don't know, they're just not that good, and you need some strong ones for those vestibule tie-outs. Last thing on cons, it says that, it easily fit anybody over 6 foot. I'm 6 foot tall, and I noticed if I was on any angle, I was hitting the walls, outer walls of the tent, and everybody knows you don't want to do that with condensation. So it's important to make sure you line yourself right, but I do move a lot in my sleep, and one night we sat on an angle just recently, and I kept hitting the bottom, and I was getting condensation on my quilt. So definitely want to use pullouts if you're taller than 6 foot. I think that's what they mean by if it will handle somebody over 6 foot, you're going to want to use the pullouts to kind of help expand those outer walls if you're taller. A couple little side notes. These are just things that I wanted to mention. So condensation, every time I've used it, depends on where you are in the country, especially what's going on with the atmosphere. Condensation hasn't been that bad. Definitely had it. Definitely want to use like a ShamWow or those Scott Brite wipes I use to absorb a little bit, but nothing like obsessive amount. Honestly, I can just think of the recent trip where every morning we let it sit out in the sun after we opened up and got out of it, and it was dried out within no time. I really did not have much trouble with condensation. Another thing I think helped that is when I pitched it, I made sure that my outer edges sat a little bit higher, still gave us privacy. Even if you're laying low, you could look out maybe a little bit. But that kind of helped the tent breathe more. And that was with the vestibules closed. We close the vestibules every time. Rachel likes to have privacy in the tent. As long as you're making sure that you give the tent room to breathe, I don't think you really have to worry about condensation much. Yes, you will have condensation. It is a trekking pole tent. It's not a double wall, but in the end, all tents pretty much have it unless you have a huge way for the tent to breathe. Another thing to mention is that, if you're a person that likes a lot of pockets in your tent, I would definitely buy their top shelf, I think is what they call it. I did not buy it yet, but I'm definitely going to buy it. It has 2 side mesh pockets at the doors. Those work really well, but I kind of like to have an extra room because I wear a hat, I wear sunglasses all the time when I'm out on trail, and then I keep my phone in there, I keep my headlamp, I wear glasses at night. If you're a person that just has a lot of side things you use at night when you're in tent, they get kind of full pretty quick. So in my other Nemo tent, in my other REI tent, and a couple others we have, they've got a lot more pockets because they have like roof pockets, and then they have side pockets. Well, this one only has the mesh ones on the side. So having that top shelf is huge, in my opinion. I'll definitely be adding it to that tent, and I would recommend it if you're interested in this tent. One last side note, just want to mention this, that they recommend putting your trekking poles at 125 centimeters. That worked perfect for us. Believe it or not, we had a small gap between using that tent there for a month, and I couldn't remember the dimensions, and I was luckily in a spot where I had signal, so I looked it up on their website just to make sure I was pitching it correctly. Just to make sure that I was learning how to do it right, I wanted to make sure I have the right dimensions. So 125, which is what they recommend on the trekking poles, it does great. I've used my Cascade Mountain Tech trekking poles, and honestly, every time I pitched it this year so far, they've worked great, and the recommendations work well. So as far as the trekking pole setup, it does great, and just wanted to note that too. So guys, I should have mentioned this at the beginning of the video. I paid for this tent with my own money back at Black Friday. As you can tell, I've had it for a little while, but I just didn't have enough time with it to do this video. But I was able to get I think it was 20% at the time, so I think it was like 320 bucks. I'm not sure what the price is. It's probably close to 400 normally. If you really want to invest in a good lightweight trekking pole tent, honestly, I think it's a great tent, and I'm really impressed with it, and we'll definitely be using it more. For people that like to put their pack in their tent, and they like wide sleeping bags. As far as 2 people and wide sleeping pads, I don't see that working well. 2 20-inch pads worked great for our Nemo pads, and we were not able to store our packs in there with it. We just kept them in the vestibule. There's just not enough room for it. So if you need all that and you're 2 people, you're probably going to move up to the 3P. As far as the 2P and you're 2 people and you put them in the vestibule, it worked fine, but just be aware of the pad size also. Now, I don't have any experience with the 1P. I know people use it also, but I feel like it still could fit a your pack in there if you needed it to. But if you're like a lot of people who just likes the 2P for the extra room, you'll have a heck of a lot of room between you, your pad, and then your bag in there and everything too, and be completely satisfied. Guys, again, I think it's a great tent. I'm really impressed with it. We'll continue to use it. Got a couple others to just purchase, so I'm excited to try those tents out too. Rachel gets tired of me buying new stuff all the time, but I just like to try it out and share it with you guys. And I've got a 1P tent that it's been around for a while, but I'm about to use it on a trip, and I decided to share it with you. And I won't do a review on it because there's a ton of them on YouTube, but be looking out. That tent will be on the channel soon. I'll be using it on a trip coming up soon. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to like it. If you're new here, we do these types of videos all the time. We do all kinds of backpacking tips, tricks, and tutorials, and we'd be glad to have you here. We do trip videos occasionally also, and just want to say we are very appreciative of your support. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. This is the Gossamer Gear The Two review video, and I was glad to finally get it out. I continue to use this tent through this year, and just want to say thank you again, and we will see you soon.